Hello, welcome to Atheist Torah Study. My name is Emma, and I am the host of Atheist Torah Study. Today we're going to be discussing Parsha Korach. I've already done this once, and for some reason the computer didn't record my audio, so I had an entire hour of commentary, and then I went to play it back, and it was just the whole time. So now I have to do it again. That's all right. There's no problem with doing things twice. So, Parsha Korach. So, Parsha Korach is one of the Torah's most dramatic political stories. Korach, along with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 community leaders, challenged the authority of Moses and Aaron. There's some really important themes in this Parsha that are related to atheists. Who gets to lead? Actually, that's not an atheist theme. It's basically asking questions about the problem with religious authority. That's a good starting place. Moses claims divine backing for his leadership, and Korach disputes it. From a modern secular point of view, this raises a familiar question. How can anyone verify their claims of religious authority? Many political and religious leaders throughout history have justified power by claiming that God is on their side. What happens when religious authority is threatened? And is dissent a threat? That's a good one too. The punishment for Korach's um, actions are extreme. From a modern perspective, this can raise questions about whether dissent should be met with debate or with violence. What does the story say about the role of dissent in a modern system? Um, in the midrash around the story of Korach, um, revolutionaries often become what they oppose is a theme. The text never really clearly tells us Korach's motivations. Was he seeking justice, or was he just trying to advance his own interests? Um, History is full of movements that begin with demands for equity, but then end up with new elites replacing old elites. And how can we tell the difference between genuine reform and a power grab? This Parsha also deals with the role of heredity and privilege, um, fear as a tool of social control, collective punishment, and community versus hierarchy. Just all kinds of really great themes. Anyways, no, let's get into the text because you may not even know what I'm talking about. Who is Korach? What is this about? So, okay, so basically this is one of my favorite parts. I've been over it like 3 or 4 times now in the last week. I've gotten into a couple of arguments with rabbis. Um, Not arguments, I shouldn't say arguments. I've gotten into a couple of discussions with rabbis in the last week over Korach because well, I'm a big fan of not necessarily of Korach as a person because you don't really know anything about Korach. You don't really know who he is or anything. I mean, Korach just sorry. Ugh. Korach just suddenly appears out of nowhere. So he's not a developed character in the he's not a developed character in the story. He's just a puppet, the same way that Pharaoh is a puppet in the story. I mean, the story is written from the point of view of God is always right and Moses is always right. Well, not always, most of the time. And most of the other characters in the story, they're just ancillary characters designed to kind of um supports the storyline. And then here's Korach, and Korach's like another one of these characters. And the role of this character in the Torah is simply to provide this character who's like a wooden dummy who I think that the way that I see it is, I mean, Korach was written by the redactors, the authors of the Torah. And the reason that they wrote him in there was to provide another example of the ways in which you're not supposed to challenge religious authority or contest religious authority. Um, I think it kind of goes deeper than that, though. I think that I don't even think that that was on the minds of these like Bronze Age readers, basically. I think the purpose of Korach was simply to show that in the story, like the idea that this God is like all powerful and everything, and you have to be obedient to this God is just such a basic framework of the Torah that there isn't really um, anything in the Torah that specifically encourages you to question or to really challenge like the central narrative of the text. Um, I mean, as an atheist and as a modern reader, sorry, it's much easier to do it now. But back then, when this text was written, well, even then, of course, there were lots of atheists around, and there were like most of the world didn't believe any of this. They didn't even know about it. So, this was really meant just for Jews to read. So, anyways, well, let's read the text, and we'll just talk about it as we go. A lot of these things will come up as we read the text. Now, Korach, son of Issar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, betook betook himself along with Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, On son of Peleth, descendants of Reuben, to rise up against Moses, together with certain Israelites, 250 of them, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. They combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far. For all the community are holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourself above God's congregation?" So, at the very beginning of the story is the most interesting part because in most parshas in the Jewish tradition, the way that the parsha is organized is to kind of highlight what it considers to be the most important central theme, sorry, of the story, and it puts it at the very front. So here they are putting this at the very front. And the claim that they're making, it's a really good claim, you know. I mean, it's actually it's it's actually one of the only line. I mean, I don't even care anything about Korach, honestly. I don't care about Korach. It's like I don't really care about Moses, honestly. You know, I barely care about God too in the story. But just this one line is like it's just blazing out of the text, like in a way that almost nothing ever is. So it just blazes out in a way that almost nothing else in the text ever does. Um, and what it said, I mean, it's just that one line, just that one line. It's like, it's so great. It says, for all the community are holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. Now, I understand this is still religion, it's still there's still God in here. So this isn't democracy. This isn't democratic, but just that one line. And one of, I mean, one of the reasons that this text isn't like a big fan, like, atheists aren't big fans of the Torah and of the text on the whole, is because it offers so little, just almost nothing that like you can use in a to find anything. I mean, everything everything has to be looked at through the eyes of either through the eyes of the tradition, and so you have to kind of understand what various commentators like over the centuries have said about the text and what it means to them. Or you can do a raw read of the text, which really won't get you very far because it just doesn't. I mean, by this point in the text, it's like you're trying to make some kind of sense of it. Like, why is this in the text, And you just can't. I mean, you'll just get a headache and just become frustrated because there's just it doesn't congeal. I mean, and I really doubt that. I don't know, maybe it did back then too. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But here is just one moment in the whole text that just is lifted up above the rest of it. There's a few other places in the Torah where the text really lifts itself up, and here it does too. So let's talk about that idea because it's in here, and I'm an atheist. I shouldn't say let's talk about it. I'm just talking to myself. Let me talk to myself about this idea. Um, So he's making the claim, Korach is making the claim that all of the community is holy, all of them. And so that's a really powerful claim. I mean, to say that all of the people are important, all of them, is a claim that you don't hear very often, not in the Torah, not in um, almost any ancient text. And you don't really hear it in the literature from the ancient world either. I am sure that, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what people thought. I don't know if there's very many places in ancient history where people made the claim that everybody is holy. I mean, I can't think of any ancient texts where I've ever seen that claim made. And the implications are really profound because the implications mean that everybody is, well, so in this text, I mean, Korach is, when you follow the logic and the laws of the Torah as it's written by the redactors, then the claim they're making isn't, they're not making really an egalitarian or a democratic claim about reality. They're making a claim just about these people. So in a way, they're still saying that there's a separation. Well, from the perspective of how the authors intended the story to be read. And there's there's kind of two sides to the story. I mean, on the one hand, the author is making the claim, or the redactor is creating this puppet, this little puppet called Korach, and Korach is saying this thing that I think that when I really think about it, when I really think about it, I mean, I think what's so brilliant about this, it's like it's not intended to be this way, but one of the nice things about the Torah is that even in the midst of all of these awful patriarchal ideas, like even though the redactor is creating a puppet, and the puppet is saying all the people are holy, and then in response to the puppet saying all the people are holy, then Moses is going to show his real power in the story. He's going to show why Moses is right and why Aaron is right and why God is right. And by doing those things, they're going to prove that they're right. And that this idea that all the people are holy is like an idea that you're supposed to, destroy someone for. So, I mean, but you can't, the, if you know anything about history, anything at all, then you can never, I mean, you can never take those words that Korach has said and ever put them in the mouth of anybody except for somebody who's speaking a profound truth. I mean, it's like it doesn't the midrash the midrash goes to town on Korach, I mean, it says Korach was this wealthy man. He was a con artist. He was a grifter. He he was you know, trying to take advantage of the people. But but here the words, I mean, Korach is saying, I think, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good lines in the Torah, but Korach has the best line in the Torah. And it's ironic that the tradition goes out of its way to make Korach into such a bad person. You know, it it makes Korach into a really bad person. And it's I don't know, maybe, I mean, he didn't exist. None of this existed. So, what you see is what's in the text. This isn't a story about this obviously isn't a story about a real person. It's a story about the anxiety and the fear of the redactors. So it's meant to the purpose of this text is it's this particular part of the text is it's meant to lift up. It shows you basically the position, the fear and the anxiety of people who hold power and who really, I mean, who are holding power because of their claims to religious authority. Which are really two things. There, on the one hand, there's the claim to religious authority, and on the other hand, there's a claim to political authority. And those two together are what we call religious nationalism. And in the text here, there's this idea. So God is basically a religious nationalist God. I mean, he's both um sorry, just a minute, I gotta do something about that. That's the cat. So I mean, what the text really does is that the whole text, I mean, this section especially, just embodies the fear of the redactors. There's the fear of them losing political power, losing religious power, and it's embedded in the memory of the text. So this is both the redactor's fear of losing power, and but it's also a way of preserving the mentality of any kind of patriarchal authority, anybody who makes claims of power that are rooted in both religious ideology and in political power. It's a way of kind of showing their anxiety. And that's what this whole thing is. The whole thing is to tell the God in this, I mean, the God in this particular part of the story is the villain. I mean, there's just no other way around it. The God is the villain. The God is the one who directly smotes out a person who is making just the most basic fair claim that can be made. And it's the claim of every generation. I mean, anytime that people are suffering and um, you know, organizing for power and for justice, they always make the same claim. It's like all the people are holy, all of them. And what Korach is saying is that everybody matters. And that's a really great idea. I mean, it's really true. Anyway, so let's read the text, and then so that you can kind of see the things that happen. I mean, you probably already, if you're paying attention to this, you probably already know the text. So this is Numbers chapter 16, and it's pretty deep into the book of Numbers. So it's like in the story, we're still in basically the second year of the Exodus. So, the narrators have basically created this story, and it's like their version of trying to tell a story of it's their version of basically trying to tell a story of the long journey, the odyssey of these people on their way to their land. And along the way, they're trying to just tell different parts of the story. It's a way of trying to shape the identity of the people. And so this part is about, what do you do when you have problem people who are challenging religious authority? That's basically what this is about. Now, on the other hand, I will say before I read the text that in all fairness, I mean, the text is also a warning against people who make a claim, which is a very true claim. So it's like the commentators, they sort of recognize this. I mean, the reason that the text is told the way it is in another way is because the commentators kind of understand that this is a genuine, legitimate impulse. I mean, it has it's one of the few places like to me, this part, just this line right here, though, this line that all the community is holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. Like that, just one line lifts the entire Torah out of the obscurity of the ancient world. It puts something in the Torah that I cannot think of in any other religious text. Not just religious text, in any text from the ancient world. I don't know that I've read that claim anywhere. And hang on, I'm gonna just do a really quick query just to see if that pops up in any ancient text. So I'll be right back because I want to know if it does. Okay, this is really interesting. So I was just doing a query of this because I was really curious about it. And doing a quick query online doesn't constitute evidence in any way. Like I couldn't do this and make an argument in front of the Supreme Court, but this is for YouTube, and my average YouTube videos are like between 1 and 3 views for the whole thing. So I'm not, doing this for any kind of audience. It's just for my own curiosity. But here it says, that there's a couple of other places in the ancient world where you could have found this. So most notably the Stoics. And of course, I'm a big, big fan of the Stoics, the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, um, the I enjoy. I sit in on this. There's a Stoics meetup that happens online, weekly, and sometimes I'll sit in on that. Just and they actually do reasoning, and they do an entire hour where they talk about things from kind of a Stoic perspective and ask you to like consider things from kind of a Stoic perspective. But here's what it says. It says the Stoics argued that all human beings participate in reason and share a common humanity. The idea that slaves and kings possessed the same fundamental dignity was unusual in the ancient world. Now, see, this has really got me curious. I'll tell you why. Okay, this has really got me curious because the text, well, the Stoic, well, now I've got to go and look something else up. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to put this on pause again. Okay, so I was just doing some more fact checking just to make sure that I wasn't just totally talking out of my out of the other opening of my body. But um so the claim that Kroc is making here. So, when as I'm looking this up, I'm being reminded of a couple of things. So one is that within the tradition itself, within the text of the tradition itself, there are other places where the claim seems self-apparent. Well, there's at least one, and it's in let's see, where is it? It's in Exodus 19. Where is that again? Exodus 19:6, where the phrase "a kingdom of priests and a holy nation" is put into the text. So, in Exodus, Vayikra 19:6, it says "a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." So that's similar, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. It's very, very different. um the claim that Korach is making. This is kind of what I'm wondering about in terms of the text, because the like to me, so one of the arguments that I got into this week about Korach with the rabbi, it wasn't an argument, it was just a back and forth, and it was very short. It didn't go on very long. But the rabbi was saying that God is perfect. And to say that God is perfect is like, to me, that's like a really Greek claim. This idea of perfection, the idea that God is perfect. Now, don't get me wrong. So what the rabbi is saying is nothing more than what most people in religious tradition think. I mean, I think that Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they really uphold this idea that God is perfect. Now, uh, so this is really deep. This is really going deep into the idea here. So, as an atheist, I mean, I would say that there's just perfection. So, perfection is this idea that there's something supernatural in the world, that there's something that is that there's what we think, and then there's kind of the real world, and not the real world. There's another reality, and the other reality is somehow perfect, whatever that means. And as an atheist, I mean, there's no perfection. There is no such thing as perfection, because it doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's no place in the universe for perfection because it doesn't exist anywhere. And God definitely, I mean, in this text, how can anybody claim that God is perfect? You know, God is the so the other argument that I got into this week with another rabbi, it wasn't sorry, again, it wasn't an argument. The dialogue that I got into with another rabbi was during a Torah study. And that rabbi was so brilliant. I just so adore that rabbi so much. And they always just have me thinking in the deepest ways. They really do. And but in the text, while we were reading this text, I mean, I it just came out of me. I mean, I just thought, well, in this text, God is the villain. He's definitely the villain in the text, you know. And it's like that was, you know, that didn't go over well. I shouldn't say it didn't go over well. It just didn't. It was a moment in which there was definitely some disagreement between myself and the very, very learned rabbi who I have just the deepest respect for over the text, because I clearly feel that in this text that the God is the villain, you know, especially in this part. He's definitely, definitely the villain. Anyway, so let's read it because I haven't even begun to read it yet. I'm going to do a straight read through and then we will talk about it. But I will point out some of the things that I've brought up along the way. Oh, yeah, but before I do, the other thing that I wanted to say, it was just, I was really curious about this because I have my own ongoing running theory that the text itself was written in the second century BCE, or it was not. I don't know when the text was written. It was definitely, I feel like it was definitely redacted and put together into a political document that would have its meaning during the Hasmonean era. And because of that, I think that it was pushing, I mean, it was doing the same thing that the Maccabean revolt was doing, which was the text is full of places where it's basically pushing back against the Greeks. And this is like just the best, you know, this is like the big example. I mean, here part of what's happening here too is that it's pushing against something. So it's like they put a claim in, and it's clearly like I don't know. I mean, I think this should just come straight out of the tradition, but maybe it doesn't. You know, there's a lot of places in the text where I mean, just the fact that the text itself exists means that it's pushing against the Greeks. But here, the text is really pushing against the Greeks in a really big way because it's making a claim that it seems like the Greeks would make, you know, but not the Greeks really. I mean, the Greeks don't all do this, only some Greeks do. And there's also some Roman philosophers doing this too. I mean, but the Greeks kind of do it, you know, I don't know. It's just but the way that they do it in the text has preserved it. And it's preserved it in a way that actually has carried it all the way through into modernity in a really great way. I mean, because it's taken the idea of everything that people projected onto God and it's kind of flipped it upside down so that everything that people project onto God that they think is God's really belongs to people, which is what religion is already doing anyways. I mean, you know, I think that for me in this last year, reading, I mean, just being exposed to Feuerbach and the thinking of Feuerbach, which is not just his thinking. I mean, it's really the thinking of most modernists. Um, I was listening to oh, what's the name of that podcast? Digital Hammurabi. I was listening to Digital Hammurabi this week, which is really fun. That's, by the way, I would recommend if you ever want to listen to some texts, some conversations with scholars of the ancient world, people who are really interested in what do they do? Akkadian, Sumerian, um, you know, like stuff that predates the Bible. Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry, it's kind of early. Digital Hammurabi. It's really great. Anyways, okay, let's read the text. They combined against Moses, and Aaron said to them, "You have gone too far, for all the community is holy, all of them. God is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourself above God's congregation?" When Moses heard this, he fell on his face. Then he spoke to Korach and all his company, saying, "Come morning, God will make known who is to serve, who is holy, by granting direct access. Whoever is chosen will be granted access." So Moses is making the claim that through some magic trick, basically, it'll show, who God has chosen. Which, so Moses isn't listening to Korach at all. He's not hearing what Korach had to say. He just doesn't, he's just not even, doesn't even understand what Korach is saying. So then he says, do this. You, Korach, and all your band take fire pans. Tomorrow, put fire in them and lay incense on them before God. Then the man who God chooses, he shall be the Holy One. You have gone too far, sons of Levi. So that's Moses talking. Moses further said to Korach, hear me, sons of Levi. Is it not enough for you that the God of Israel has set you apart from the community of Israel and given you direct access to perform the duties of God's tabernacle and to minister to the community and serve them? Now that God has advanced you and all your fellow Levites, do you seek the priesthood too? Truly, it is against God that you and all your company have banded together. For who is Aaron that you should rail against him? So basically, Moses is saying that, you already have some role and something in the thing, and so you should be happy with that. And I mean, think about what they're talking about here. They're talking about a building. They're talking about a building and who has a responsibility with some part of the building. I mean, that's what they're talking about. And like somehow you're supposed to be happy with that in your life. And to me, like what Korach is making, the claim that Korach is making, it's it's really a claim for the generations. I mean, it's a claim that goes all the way into modernity, into the future. Like Kroc is basically opening a window and he's saying, look, I can't see the future. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is this, like that everybody is holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. It's like just that one line, it's supposed to be a line that's like, no, no, you can't think that way. That's not how we are. But it's actually the line that like it's really the liberating line. It's the revolutionary line because it's like it's the line that opens you up to the future because it says, we like within the people themselves is they are holy and they contain the tools for their own liberation. I don't know. That's one way to see it. As an atheist, though, I don't know. Even that's not really very useful. I mean, what does it mean to say that everybody's holy? It's a nice idea, you know. I mean, you could just say everybody's equal. I mean, but what is that? I guess as an atheist, I wonder, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Everybody's holy. It's like, yeah, I don't know. No, not everybody's holy. That's not true. Everybody's not holy because I mean, as an atheist, it's like it's not even about that. I mean, the world isn't about everybody's holy. Everybody's alive, everybody's conscious. As an atheist, I guess I would say everybody's conscious and everyone is capable of contributing. But but that only means something when you actually give people the tools to meaningfully participate in in the community in which they're engaged in. So it's like you can't really even begin to say that people are empowered unless you're also creating a kind of society in which that sort of collective empowerment can actually have some kind of meaning. And there's a lot of tools that kind of help you get there. I mean, one of them is literacy. If you make sure that everybody's educated and literate. Another one is having access to the means and resources of, producing goods and of having the daily things of life that people need. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Having good medical care, Also, having a world that's free of warfare and violence is really important. I mean, the but by this point in the document, I mean, honestly, the document itself, the Torah, is so it's had so much taken out of it. I mean, it's had the goddess tradition has been taken mostly from the text. Um, it's really the text itself, and I mean, if there were a collection of stories kind of floating around that were somewhat Jewish stories, then they were doing different things at the time. These stories were free. They weren't bound up in this text. I mean, the text itself is binding these ideas together in a way that is intended to have a particular result. It's intended to have a particular end means. And it's like if you take the stories and kind of unbind them again and let them be what they were, it's like you have here, I mean, I think what you really have in the text is you have a redactor, somebody who's obviously a really bright scribe, who's educated, who's bright, and who is really kind of writing the propaganda that's needed for a kingdom, for a religious nationalist kingdom to exist. And so they're putting together a text that they hope will fulfill that purpose. And so in doing that, they're taking a lot of really great things that are around them, you know, and it's not just them doing this. I mean, this is also put together over time, but like there's some free floating parts in here that maybe belongs to place else, but here they've been bound up together into this piece. I'm rambling. Okay, well, let's read a little bit more. I'm just going to go for about another 10 minutes. Is it not enough that you brought us from a land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness, that you would also lord it over us? Even if you had brought us to a land flowing with milk and honey and given us possession of fields and vineyards, should you gouge out the eyes of those involved? We will not come. So there's like really a very direct, like people are saying that no, they're not going to participate in this particular form of religious authoritarianism. So you have like here you have like two very clear statements of dissenters who will not participate in religious authoritarianism. And just the fact that their stories are preserved is great, And again, these people may not even embody real resistance to religious authoritarianism, but their statements really can, even though they also idealize the past in a way that isn't real. I'll be right back, excuse me. I'm back. So let's finish this out. I really do want to try to get through the text if I can. So we've been listening to these two guys. Even if you had brought us, yeah, I already read that. Moses was much grieved. He said to God, "Pay no regard to their oblation. I have not taken the donkey of any one of them, nor have I wronged any one of them." Which is, so that's kind of weird because Moses is talking to God and he's acting as if God doesn't know what he's saying. So the narrator definitely imagines a God character who is not omniscient. This is not a perfect God. This is not an all-powerful God. So this idea that God is perfect and omniscient, like it doesn't really belong to the Jewish tradition here, which is something I actually kind of appreciate. It's there's been so much put onto this text. Then Moses said to Korach, "Tomorrow you and all your company appear before God, you and they and Aaron. Each of you take your fire pan and lay incense on it. Each of you bring that fire pan before God, 250 fire pans, and Aaron also. They took each their fire pan, they put fire in it, laid incense on it, and took it to the entrance of meeting, as did Moses and Aaron. When they say fire pan, I'm thinking of like a frying pan. That's exactly what I think of. And Korach gathered the whole community against them at the entrance of this is a big show off, big showdown. Korach gathered the whole community against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then the presence of God appeared to them. So this is the whole reason for the story is the God. This is the God of the smoke and the mirrors. This is the God of fire appearing here. This is the fire God. And I mean the purpose of putting Korach here, and this is like so like any revenge fantasy you've ever had, like anytime you imagine some political leader that you want to get rid of, or somebody in your life, an annoying person who you just think, oh, they're just so annoying, then you can just have this fantasy wish where like this is like their Korach and you're God, basically. This is what this is. And this is the redactors imagining that they're God, basically. Like, this is how they're getting rid of their problems, because this is how God gets rid of his problems in the Bible. This is just the perfect example of how God deals with how the religious idea deals with its own problems. It can't handle it can't handle at the very front end of the statement is the idea, oh, everybody's holy. And here is what comes out on the other end. Here's what the God thinks about it. Stand back from this community. Then I may annihilate them in an instant. Now here he's trying to say, oh, look at how humble Moses is. He's intervening for the people. But they fell on their faces, Moses did, and Aaron, and said, O God, source of breath of all flesh, when one member sins, will you be wrathful with the whole community? God spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the community and say, withdraw from the abodes of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram. Moses rose and went to Dathan, Abiram, and the elders of Israel following him. He addressed the community, saying, move away from the tents of the wicked men and touch nothing that belongs to them, lest you be wiped out for all their sins. So, I mean, understand what this text is saying. What this text is saying is that the God in the story will literally kill everybody, anybody who's there, not even the people that the God disagrees with, and it's like, why does the God disagree with the people? Korach is making this claim. It's a great claim that all the people are holy and God is among them. So, I mean, as an atheist, I don't even have skin in this game. I'm not really in this. I don't appear in this at all. But I'm still rooting for Korach because Korach, he's doing two things. He's dissenting. I always appreciate anyone who's a dissenter for whatever reason. He's being a dissenter. And I feel like you need to give the dissenter a voice. The dissenter has a place in the community. The dissenter is so, so important because the dissenter is where everything comes from. Like all of the genius that has ever happened in the world has always come from the dissenter. It's always come from the person who said, oh, the way everybody's doing things is wrong. That's not the right way to do it. Here, let me show you how to do it the right way, or everybody thinks this, you're wrong. Here's the right idea. And it's like, I mean, every person in history, and it's not even the dissenter for people, it's the dissenter for movements. Oh, you think colonialism is a good idea? I dissent from that. I don't agree that colonialism is a good idea. Oh, you think having nuclear weapons everywhere is a good plan? I dissent from that. I don't think that having a world full of nuclear weapons is a good idea. Oh, you think capitalism is a good idea? I dissent from that. I think that capitalism is an exploitative system. Whatever the idea is, it plays in there. Oh, you think that we need to have a world run by men? Men need to control everything in the world? I dissent from that. It's like Korach is is the patron of dissent. He's the patriarch of dissent, and he's forever remembered for the role that he plays as a dissenter. And it's like atheism is a dissenting movement. Oh, you think there's a God? You think there's a God that controls everything in the universe? You think that God made the earth? You think God made people? You think God made your brain? You think that God gave us all of the laws and the rules that we're supposed to live our world with? I dissent. I totally dissent, 100%. I dissent from everything. Everything that is in your religious text that you think is the foundation of reality. I dissent. So, Korach dissents. And here's what God does in the story. Of course, again, this is a story. This isn't a real God. No, this is real. This is what the framework of somebody who thinks that they understand religious authoritarianism has. And it's their insecurity. It's the big tell, it's their big insecurity. So they withdrew from the abodes of Korach, Dathan, and Abiram. Now Dathan and Abiram came out, and they stood at the entrance of the tents with their wives, their adult children, their little ones. Moses said, "By this shall you know it was God who sent me to do all these things. They are not of my own devising. If these people's death is the death of all humankind, if their lot is humankind's common fate, then it was not God who sent me. But if God brings about something unheard of, so that the ground opens up its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, you shall know that those involved have spurned God." Scarcely had he finished speaking all these words, when the ground under them burst asunder, and the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed them, with their households, and all of Korach's people, and all their possessions. They went down alive into Sheol, and all that belonged to them. The earth closed over them, and they vanished from the midst of their congregation. All Israel fled in shrieks. The earth might swallow us. And then, okay, so first there's an earthquake, right? And the earthquake is a very micro earthquake. It only happens right there above Korach. And so God isn't just punishing Korach for dissenting, but he's also punishing his entire family, like his wives, which reminds me of exactly how our government deals with its problems. Our when we decide that there's somebody who is evil that we need to take out, we don't just kill that person, we also kill their entire family. And I can think of so many examples in recent history where they've done that. So anyways, but then after we've murdered the leader, the dissenter, and their entire family, and all their children and their grandchildren, after we've murdered all of them, then there's more people to murder. So then God sends out a fire, and the fire consumes the 250 people who participated in the ritual. So Moses has told these people to come and to participate in this ritual, and then God burns them all alive. Yeah. This is the imagination of this redactor. This person has got some issues. They need some therapy. They really do. And then there's a plague. And the plague, so, the divine is like just going to town with mass murdering people here. So there's a plague, and then the only thing that stops the plague is Aaron and his fire pan. So Aaron and his fire pan stop the plague. And then at the very end of the story, there's still one more magic trick, and that's like all of the people, the patriarchs from the community, put their staffs inside of the tent. And then in the morning, Aaron's staff is turned into an almond tree. And that's the story. So, welcome to Torah fairy tales. This is it. Anyways, I do like the ending though. The ending's great. It turns into an almond tree, and it's like it's a happy ending. First there's a bunch of there's a dissenter, somebody who's done something wrong, they've sinned, and then there's a big fire and an earthquake, And there's even a little bit of sculpture going on because the fire pans are taken and beaten into some sort of temple artifact. So that's Korach. It's a very strange parsha, very, very strange. And but it has a place. It has a place in Jewish tradition. It's actually got a really important place because it represents something that comes up all the time. I mean, all of the time we want to challenge authoritarianism. All of the time we we see the way that institutional leadership is functioning and we realize that it's completely dysfunctional. And this is kind of the fantasy of somebody who thinks that God is on this is the fantasy of someone who thinks that God is on their side. And they think that, the God of this story is on their side. So So they act in the world, they do terrible things in the world because they think that the God in this story is on their side. And we always have to resist that. I mean, this is an icon. This is what do they call it in the tradition? It's an idol. This is an idol. This God is an idol because this is a God who's murdering dissenters who challenge authority. So this God in this story, it's an idol because the way that the God is told in this part of the story is told to reinforce religious authoritarianism and is a God who's being constructed in order to preserve the idea that religious authoritarianism is the way to go. And that's not the deepest truth. And even in the Jew, I'm not even talking as an atheist, like as a Jew, that is so far below the highest understanding of our tradition. I mean, the Jewish tradition can be so much more than that. It can be so much higher than that idea of a God who basically completely wipes out dissent. And I'm proud to be a follower of the tradition of Korach, the tradition of dissent. So, thank you. This has been Atheist Torah Study. We're almost done. I'm so happy, but I took on this project. I'm going to follow it through to the end. There's only, I think there's 12 parshas left. So, and the sun's just rising, which is really nice. It's just the day after the longest day of the year. So we've had some great sunrises and sunsets lately. All right. Well, thanks for watching. I'll see you in a few days.